Hi, today's video is about Jane Doe, and I'm not lying when I say she's one of the most ridiculous agents I've ever tested. Between the different teams that do well with her, how disgusting Disorder is when paired with her, and how amazing her W engine is for herself, I dare say this could change everything. Before I fly off the rails, however, I do want to mention that this will be more of a first impressions and showcase before she goes live, so things of course are subject to change. I'm also doing all of this testing as well on the creator experience server, so keep this in mind. However, once your banner is released, I will upload a complete guide on how to play her once I've done more testing, so let's get into it. Jane is one of the game's fastest and most flexible in terms of how to play her. She's great at applying anomaly, does amazing damage, and she also helps with daze since she applies assault as her attribute anomaly. All of this, however, is not nearly as valuable as how fun she is to play and honestly how amazing she looks. Sorry, that last one is kind of biased. So now let's take a look at her skills, starting with Passion. Put simply, this is her unique resource similar to Chingy's Flash Connect Voltage or Grace's Zap Stacks. This bar increases when Jane deals damage, performs a perfect dodge or an assist, and once it's full, she enters the Passion state. Just being in the Passion state allows you to apply anomaly faster and also gives you bonus attack, but once you begin dealing damage in the state, it begins to drain. Fortunately, perfect dodges and assists do maintain and regenerate this bar though. Now, onto her basic attacks. This has 6 parts to it, and it's actually not too complicated despite the very flashy animations that it has. In most cases, simply using all 6 parts of the basic attack will give you the best result in terms of anomaly applied and damage done. Aside from the bonus stats that you gain when entering Passion state, you do also gain access to one use of Salcho Jump, which is a special basic attack Jane performs when she holds down her basic attack while in this state. This attack is basically just Piper's Spin, however the only way for you to get another use of this is by losing the Passion state and then re-entering it. Salcho Jump is one of Jane's best skills because it gives her damage reduction while also applying anomaly quickly, all on top of dealing decent damage too. Jane's special attack surprisingly is even more simple than her basic attack and is used to apply more anomaly, deal decent damage, and avoid attacks in some cases. This should be used whenever possible, but keep in mind that this applies a lot of anomaly, so time it to activate assault quickly during a burst window or when you have buffs up. Jane's assist and dodges are both excellent sources of anomaly and damage too. However, there are a few things to know about her dodge. First and foremost, she actually has several different dash attacks and each of them come with their own animation. Truthfully though, the only time you'll be performing a dodge or a dash attack is when you're applying her signature W engine's passive, but otherwise using it to dodge enemy attacks is fine, but definitely not mandatory. And finally, Jane's chain and ultimate are both decent for damage, especially when fighting a stunned enemy, but otherwise you're mostly using this just for daze or anomaly application. This is actually a pretty underrated strength of anomaly based characters since you don't need to invest as much into their skills for their damage. Before we leave the kit section, however, we have to talk about her very important core passive and her additional ability. Jane's core passive states that if she hits an enemy, they are given the Nod debuff for 10 seconds. If any squad member applies assault on a Nod enemy and causes flinch, the effect is increased by 5 seconds and your assault can now crit. This is huge not only because no other character can do this, but also because you are given 50 crit damage to scale with this damage. This, alongside having a very easy way to build this crit rate for this attack. Now unfortunately, Jane's crit rate that you would receive from substats and main stats do not affect your ability to crit with this core skill, but fortunately, you can actually stack as much anomaly proficiency as possible since you gain crit rate when you stack anomaly proficiency on Jane. This is genuinely one of the craziest parts of Jane's kit, and it's pretty clear why. No other character in the game can crit with their anomalies, and Jane already receives so many free stats in her kit to buff her damage. Now for her additional ability, this buffs the core skill passive and Jane's overall gameplay goals even more. When she has another anomaly agent or someone from her faction on her team, she increases her anomaly buildup rate by 15% and gains an additional 15% if the enemy is already suffering from another anomaly. Basically, if you pair her with characters who can apply anomaly often, like Grace, you are applying assault after assault after assault over and over to each enemy and making them explode. Moving on to her build, set in W engine, there has been some testing done already, and here were my findings. Jane's signature significantly outperforms any other W engine in the game, and this makes sense since it's coming with her banner. The additional element damage, the anomaly proficiency as a base stat instead of something like pen ratio, and the ability to stack the passive from her signature makes this an incredible choice for those choosing to build Jane. But let's talk alternatives for a moment. I've recently seen discussions around Electro Lip Gloss, Weeping Gemini, and Rainforest Gourmet as potential replacements, so here's a quick breakdown for those. Electro Lip Gloss's performance is very competitive relative to these other W engines, but there is something that players must remember before picking this choice. Despite it having one of the highest damage potentials in the game, it does suffer from being a battle battle pass weapon and therefore needing 6 whole battle pass cycles before it ends up competing at the highest level. By comparison, Weeping Gemini and Rainforest Gourmet both perform slightly worse than Electro Lip Gloss at rank 5, but they are so much easier to get multiple copies of. Electro Lip Gloss does top the damage charts assuming you do have the right setup and have it maxed from the battle pass, but this may be less realistic for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. Therefore, in terms of recommendations, I would definitely suggest Weeping Gemini if you're running a disorder composition and have 2 anomaly characters, but otherwise Rainforest Gourmet if you want to play her more casually because of its easy to apply passive effect. For sets, 4-piece Fanged Metal is definitely her best set, especially if you have another anomaly character who can run the 4-piece Freedom Blues, but let's talk about her 2-piece sets. Hormone Punk and Puffer Electro actually end up being very competitive and perform well against Freedom Blues, so ultimately it's better to run whichever 2-piece set effect you have more anomaly proficiency or attack percent rolls on. However, I would still recommend Freedom Blues since some of Jane's kit specifically scales with how much anomaly proficiency you have, and therefore Jane gains double value in having this 2-piece effect. On the topic of stats, Jane is definitely looking for attack percent and anomaly proficiency whenever she can get it in substats, but in regard to her main stats, here's a breakdown of what she's looking for. Her 4th slot will definitely want anomaly proficiency for the kit scaling that I mentioned earlier, but attack percent will also work if you are desperate. For the 5th slot, physical damage, attack percent, and pen ratio all perform decently closely and is once again a conversation of which has better rolls. The 6th slot is dedicated to either attack percent or anomaly mastery, but given how many times you can apply assault, anomaly mastery is definitely insane value here. Before I talk about the most important topic of all, I do have a few sample team compositions that I cleared content with that I do believe perform well with Jane. The first and most obvious of all is Jane, Qingyi, Seth. Seth provides an insane anomaly proficiency buff alongside reducing anomaly build-up resistance to all attributes by 20% for 20 seconds. Qingyi stuns the boss to allow Jane to do a stupid amount of assault damage, and this is one of the hyper carry focused teams that actually showcase Jane as the true queen of Zenless Zone Zero. However, Jane Qingyi Grace is also fantastic and allows you to see some absolutely wild numbers, hitting almost 1 million damage in total, and is one of the most fun teams I've ever played. It does require 3 total S-rank characters, so keep that in mind when trying it out, but the absolutely insane high burst damage is definitely worth noting and is absolutely incredible. The final team that I mentioned to be worth talking about is Jane, Grace, Rena, and this is for those of you who built Anton and no longer like that toy. Grace and Rena by themselves already complement each other perfectly, and all it takes is one disorder to make this team shine. This is also just the upgraded version of Grace, Rena, Piper if you were playing that prior to Jane's release, and it simply does way more consistent damage while also not requiring much regearing or changing of stats, assuming you had either of these teams built before. Now for the final topic that I have for this video, we arrive at the age-old question of, well, should you pull for Jane? The truth is that no character in Zenless Zone Zero has ever been put in a position where you cannot clear them without a fancy new limited, so even despite Jane being an absolute powerhouse, she is definitely not a must pull. To be clear, no other character outside of maybe Zhu Yuan, because she's the only ether DPS, can even be considered a must pull since they don't do anything specifically unique, but design wise and for those of you who love her playstyle, it is absolutely fine to pull for Jane Doe, but keep in mind that there is no content in the game that suggests you must have Jane Doe on there or else you can't complete it. Even when comparing other physical characters like Piper or Nekomata, for instance, they certainly perform worse than Jane when compared to one another, but remember that you will likely overkill or completely smash any content with Jane, and that's just not necessary. The standard characters of 1.0, at least currently, are all able to clear content, especially after they have reached level 60, so this is where the conversation comes to a close. If you love Jane's kit or want flashy big numbers, by all means, pull for her. She looks fantastic. However, I would be lying if I said that Jane's kit is so unique and irreplaceable that no other character in the game could do what she does. At the end of the day, she's another limited DPS who does crit when no one else can, but that's not super special relative to your wallet. That's going to be it for this video though, guys. I hope you enjoyed my first impressions and look at Jane. I think she is absolutely bonkers, and even though there aren't that many characters in the game right now that can really be considered must pulls, I do think that I'll be pulling for this character, especially because of how ridiculous she looks. As always, if you enjoyed today's content, make sure to like, comment, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe. Make sure to check out the rest of my socials as well if you wanted to see more Zenless Zone Zero content. But as always, guys, thanks again for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.